We're staying. The people who live here need our protection.
To be honest, I had a really hard time to make up my mind about what to think about the Book of Boba Fett, and it seems like the writers didn't know either. This show suffers so many problems, and I think it's because the story was all over the place. 7 episodes were just not enough to fit in all the plot, considering the best 2 of them didn't even contain Boba. He was absent for most of his own show. Also, they wanted to tell too much story and then relied too much on fan service. I mean, these are obvious reasons why the show got extremely bad reviews. But before we come to the ridiculous part, we need to look on the expectations we had, because the show failed on most of them. At the end of Mandalorian Season 2, we get to see Boba and Fennec killing Bib Fortuna and taking over Jabba's palace as a first teaser for the show. That was a nicely fitting move when you're concerned that Boba returned to the planet he can call home the most and take control of the leftovers of his former master, to kind of rebuild the old crime empire of Jabba, but under his rule this time. Since Tatooine was always known for its criminal underworld, if you can still call it underworld when it's openly ruled by crime lords, and so we had the perfect setting for an underground adventure. Something the trailer already showed us, with fights for power and pragmatic alliances. Something in the direction of Game of Thrones, but in Star Wars. You know, that kind of multi-layered story with many different parties with different goals and twisted turns and betrayals. I think you get the idea what I'm talking about. That is basically what we got in the first trailer, and everybody saw it as kind of a spin-off show that could explore the galaxy's underworld of syndicates and bounty hunters a little more. Well, not so much. We get overloaded with old Western movie references instead.
Think it through.
Starting with the first episode that showed us flashbacks about how Boba escaped a Sarlacc and lived with the Tusken Raiders. And you know, it was nice to see the culture of the Sand People and figuring out that they're just a misunderstood society, but it also was a little too much sometimes. Every time the picture cuts to Boba in the Bacta tank, I knew that they will waste the remaining part of the episode with a flashback where he digs for melons or something. And the whole episode with the train, yeah, well, what did it add to the story? With always in mind that there would only be 7 episodes of this show, and the real story haven't, even after the 3rd episode, not started at all, it kind of became annoying because the flashbacks were clearly not adding any new value to the main story. And dang, I also wish they hadn't added any of the following things to the story. I mean, what is this? I thought we were on a poor sand planet where everyone tries to get by with anything they can get, and now they drive around on skittled colored Vespas? How does that fit the setting? And then they only drive like 10 miles per hour. What were they thinking about this? Why is Tatooine London's suburbs now?
Then why'd you let the Monga charge us a month's wages for a week's war?
Not that we have any wages.
And how can somebody be this pale on a planet with 2 suns? I know they should be a reference to the mods gang of the 60s, but who was thinking, yeah, you know what I'm really missing on Tatooine? Vespas, but jacked with mirrors in bright green. Oh, and a Thundercat with spaghetti on his head. That felt a little off. It doesn't match the setting, and there are many things and scenes in the show that are references to old movie classics, and they just try to throw them into the show by any means, without checking if they match. So they thought of a reference first they wanted to put in, and then somehow bend the story around that it kind of fits the reference, no matter what has to happen to make that reference come true. And that's where things get really cheesy. That's plot convenience. The story decisions make no sense until you see that it's just used to hop from one reference to another, and the Book of Boba Fett also never really catches up to the originals. it often almost feels like bold theft. So with this in mind, let's jump to the last 2 episodes. First of all, I really had to deal with my inner fanboy here. I never thought we were going to see Luke, restarting the Jedi Order and training the new Jedi generation, but they did a pretty decent job here. I never knew I wanted to see this, but it feels so satisfying. They also improved on Luke's face with the deepfake. It looks way more natural and believable now. But again, the show here is completely away from Boba. If the show was called Mando Season 3 or Boba and Mando or something, no one would complain about that. But with the expectations we had in which the show direction would go, and with the name Book of Boba Fett, that was just something nobody was ready for. And when you realize it's the next to last episode and the main story hasn't even started at all, you kind of want to know what the heck you're actually watching. But nice scene and concept here overall. And then the story finally begins to start, kind of. I really liked that they brought Cad Bane to live action, and I also think he perfectly fits the story when you know the background about Cad Bane and Boba from the Clone Wars. I mean, he was always concepted as a gunslinger, so he kind of had to appear in this show. I just don't know why they introduced him that late into the show. I mean, he's the real main villain and appears straight out of nowhere. That's kind of a waste. And then there is his look. I have a problem when they bring back characters or bring Clone Wars characters to live action and you realize just a small detail is off. Like that small detail you can't stop recognizing then and you only see that something is not working. That kills the illusion. At first that was Ahsoka's unproportional headwear and the Gamorrean guards in Mando Season 2, and now it's much more obvious, Cad Bane. I think it's not really the skin color that fails the most here, but the proportion of his face. It's too stuffed together. And now some people come and say, hey, Clone Wars is very stylized, Dooku and Palpatine also look very different, but we already have Cad Bane species in Star Wars before. Duros are already seen in the cantina on Mos Eisley in A New Hope, and they look completely different than Cad. Props to those guys who made Cad Bane look normal with deepfake. Then they also wasted Garza with a reference. No idea why they had no plan what to do with this character, but okay, at least I hope that Max wasn't in there when it blew up. And then the final episode drowns in bad executed references and plot holes. Many plot inconveniences.
I got a surprise for you!
Turn around!
What?
Turn around!
Can't hear you!
Everything here feels so bad and out of place. I mean, besides everybody already knows the Pikes killed his Tusken tribe, the decision they make no sense, the references do not work.
Following offer. Nothing.
This was pretty fun though.
If you refuse these terms, the arid sands of Tatooine will once again flourish with flowered fields fertilized with the bodies of your dead. His words.
They just stand in the middle of the street and get constantly shot at. Seriously, what is the sense of this if they just can't die? They are invincible. Why should I worry about them if they just have undestroyable armor? And then surprisingly the people of Freetown still arrive and then all just stand behind one car. Nobody of these Pikes have a grenade or something? That just feels so low, no special tactics or outsmarting required for them in order to win. It's just standing and shooting for 5 minutes and they win for some reason. Also Chrysanthemum returns because he's still alive, gets hit several times and even needs help, but then runs normally like all the others. And then he gets punched by a robot leg and can't walk without any help? What is this? Why is he spinning? Oh my god, I can't watch any longer. Here I like the idea of a super weapon, kind of droidical like war machines, very menacing, but spoiler, they are not. Here, why don't they shoot? They are like 30 meters away from them. Why don't they just open fire on them? Oh, because they had to do a poser shot that makes no sense first. And this, what is this? Why does it feel so bad? Why did they have to do this? They're just standing right in front of them and just move left and right, and that completely outmaneuvers the droid. They can even talk in front of them without anything happens. They can just defeat the droids by standing in front of them and moving left and right. But then the Rancor appeared, and I have to say that looked pretty cool and was a really nice opening. Even though I didn't know why this guy is still here when there's a full-scale war going on in the city. But the problem I have here is like, you know, everyone said, oh, it would be so nice and such a big flex for Boba if he would ride a Rancor in the last episode, but I really don't care. We saw the Rancor once in the show, there was absolutely no training or development in their connection, and now he's riding him. I couldn't care less about that. What a waste of maturity. The standoff, on the other hand, was pretty nice, a reference that worked well because it's to Star Wars itself. This time, Cat is faster, and that makes sense since he was a bounty hunter all along those years and Boba was trapped in a Sarlacc pit and was not properly healed for several years. So that makes sense that Cat pulls faster here, twice. I also like how Boba played his ace as a Tusken member too. That was, hands down, very well made. People are speculating if Cat is still alive since his something like heartbeat computer is still working, but for me he really doesn't have to. And then there is this final scene where Fennec single-handedly kills the enemy leadership within a minute. Through the roof, through a closed ceiling. Wow, that was brutal, but kind of deserved it. If it is really that easy to kill all the bosses, why haven't they tried that in the first place? I mean, Boba even knows where the Pike headquarters are because he was there before. At first, I wanted to do a normal review, with the main problem being that the show was all over the place, but the last episode really blew me away. I know that Dave and John can do Star Wars, but watching this, that feels so ridiculous, really hurted me as a fan. And I know I'm not alone on this one.